The attic was filled with dust and memories, a place I had avoided for years. Boxes were stacked high, some covered with old sheets, others bursting at the seams with forgotten belongings. As I shifted one of the heavier boxes, something slipped from between two of them and landed on the wooden floor with a soft thud. I bent down and picked it up, my fingers brushing over the smooth, time-worn leather cover of an old diary. Curious, I opened it and immediately recognized the handwriting. It was my mother's, the same elegant script that had filled my childhood birthday cards, written the little notes she'd left in my lunchbox, and marked my growing height on the kitchen wall. My heart clenched as I ran my fingers over the ink, as though touching her words would somehow bring her back. It had been 17 years since she passed away, yet holding this diary made it feel like she was right there with me again. My name is Isabel, and at 31 years old, I was finally cleaning out my childhood home. My father had recently moved to Florida with his second wife, Teresa, leaving me with the responsibility of sorting through decades of family history before selling the house. I had expected to find sentimental items, old letters, maybe some forgotten childhood treasures, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to uncover. As I flipped through the pages, my mother's words sent a chill through me. Something isn't right, she had written in an entry dated just 3 months before her death. I saw Teresa with Victor again today. They didn't notice me at the cafe. She passed him documents under the table, papers with our family letterhead. I froze. Teresa had come into our lives just 6 months before my mother's death. She was introduced as my father's legal consultant at his manufacturing company, and Victor had been our family lawyer for as long as I could remember. The idea that they had been meeting in secret before my mother's passing made my stomach twist uneasily. The diary entries became more frantic as I read on. Victor has been pushing James to revise the estate planning, says it needs modernizing, but why now, and why won't he discuss it when I'm present? I paused, trying to remember that time in my life. I had been just 14 when my mother passed, and I had accepted what everyone told me, that her heart condition had finally caught up to her. I remembered whispers from my father's colleagues about how she had grown paranoid near the end, convinced that something was wrong. I had believed them, never questioning the story, but now, reading her words, I felt a creeping sense of dread. Teresa's not who she seems, another entry read. I've seen her true face when James isn't looking, the way she watches him, calculating, the way she's already measuring the house, suggesting updates that would erase every trace of me. A sudden creak from the attic stairs made me jump, my heart pounding wildly. I held my breath, straining to hear any movement, but it was just the house settling, an old structure groaning under the weight of time. Teresa never came up here anyway. She always claimed she was allergic to dust. I turned back to the diary, my hands trembling as I flipped to the final entries. My mother's handwriting, once so elegant, had become jagged and desperate. Found proof today, documents in Victor's office. He's been working with Teresa for months before he introduced her to James. They're planning something, need to tell James, show him the evidence, meeting Victor tomorrow to confront him. My mother died the very next day, heart failure, they had said, natural causes. I closed the diary and stared at the dusty attic floor, my mind racing. For years, I had felt an unexplainable unease around Teresa, but I had always dismissed it as normal stepfamily tension. Now, I wasn't so sure. Slowly, pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even realized existed were falling into place. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. A message from Teresa. Darling, how's the attic cleaning going? Don't bother with old papers, just toss everything. My blood ran cold. She knew I was up here, sorting through the past, and she was trying to steer me away from something she didn't want me to find. I looked down at my mother's final words. Must protect Isabel's inheritance, must stop them. I spent the rest of the night reading through every entry, my mother's fears and suspicions unfolding before me. She had documented everything, every strange meeting, every suspicious glance, every discrepancy in Teresa's past. Teresa's background doesn't add up. One entry noted, she says she grew up in Seattle, but her knowledge of the area is vague, claims to have graduated from Stanford Law, but when I mentioned professors I know there, she changed the subject. My mother had been investigating, quietly piecing together the truth, and then, she had died. My hands shook as I grabbed my laptop. I searched for property records in Arizona, where my mother had mentioned Teresa's supposed late husband had lived. And there it was. Richard Conway, Teresa's so-called deceased husband, was alive and well, still married to his actual wife. Teresa had fabricated her entire history. Another text from Teresa lit up my screen. Found any interesting family photos up there? I'd love to see them. Maybe I'll come help you sort through everything tomorrow. A chill ran down my spine. She was getting nervous. She knew I was uncovering something she had worked hard to bury. I needed help. I couldn't trust Victor, and my father was too blind to see what was happening. I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for Sarah Chen, a law school friend who specialized in estate litigation. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was her. Sarah met me the next day at a quiet cafe. I showed her the diary and the estate documents I had found. These aren't just updates, she said after a long silence. They completely restructure ownership. This clause here, it gives Teresa control over all major decisions once your father turns 65. He turns 65 next month, I whispered, my stomach twisting. Sarah flipped another page. And this, it shifts inheritance rights. If Teresa has a child with your father, that child would outrank you in every financial decision. I thought about the way Teresa had recently hinted at wanting children. She's been talking about IVF, I murmured, suggesting Dad isn't too old to have another baby. Sarah nodded grimly. This has been her plan all along. She's been setting everything up perfectly. I felt sick. My mother had seen it coming, had tried to warn my father, and when she got too close to the truth, she died. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Teresa. Darling, I noticed you took some papers from the attic. Anything interesting? I'd love to look through them with you. Sarah met my eyes. She's worried. I tightened my grip on the diary. Good. But I knew Sarah was right about one thing. People who go to such great lengths to manipulate and deceive don't go down without a fight. And if my mother had been silenced for getting too close, what would Teresa do to me now that I knew the truth? I took a deep breath and handed Sarah the text message. She had been pushing me for days to share anything I found while going through the attic. She said she was worried about me, about how I had been obsessing over old papers and hidden secrets. But I knew she was just as eager for answers as I was. She's nervous, Sarah said after reading the message. She probably realizes the diary is missing. Have you told your father about any of this yet? I shook my head. Over the years, Teresa had worked hard to separate my father from anyone who could have warned him about her. She convinced him to move from city to city, making it difficult for him to maintain old friendships. Now, living in Florida, he was completely under her control, unaware of the woman he had married. We need solid proof before we say anything to him, Sarah advised. Something undeniable. Something he can't ignore, no matter how much Teresa tries to manipulate him. That proof came when we least expected it. The private investigator Sarah had hired found someone, a man who had suffered at Teresa's hands before. His name was Robert Henderson, a retired executive, and he had lost millions to her schemes. She was calling herself Teresa Morgan back then, he told us over a video call. His voice was calm, but I could see the pain in his eyes. She pretended to be a grieving widow. I believed her, just like your father did. By the time I realized who she really was, she had already disappeared, with half of my assets. He took a deep breath before adding, the lawyer who helped her, it sounds like the same Victor you mentioned. I thought about my mother's final diary entry, the one where she wrote about her fears, her desperate attempts to protect our family. She had discovered something terrible, something dangerous, and she had died before she could warn us. Now, 17 years later, I finally had the proof she had been searching for. Sarah and I planned my confrontation with Teresa carefully. Sarah insisted we meet in a public place, somewhere with plenty of people around. We also set up recording devices, making sure every word would be documented. I chose a cafe, the same one where my mother had once spotted Teresa and Victor together all those years ago. When Teresa arrived, she greeted me with a warm smile, as if she wasn't hiding years of lies and crimes. Darling, you seem tense, she said smoothly as she settled into the chair across from me. I've been so worried about you. Spending all this time digging through old things, it's not healthy. I didn't bother with small talk. Instead, I slid my mother's diary across the table and watched her reaction. I found something in the attic, I said. Mom's last diary. You remember my mother, don't you? Or should I say, Teresa Blackwood remembers her. For a split second, her entire expression changed. The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. But she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her tone dismissive. But her gaze was fixed on the diary, unable to look away. "Really? Because I think you do." I kept my voice steady, even though my hands were trembling under the table. "You were the one my mother saw with Victor. She was going to expose you the day she died. Just like Robert Henderson was going to. Just like the Palmers before him." She didn't react at first, but I noticed her grip tighten around her coffee cup. "These are ridiculous accusations," she said, her voice a little sharper now. "Your father will be very upset when he hears you're spreading such lies." I smiled slightly. "My father will be more upset to find out his wife is already married, to someone else. Richard Conway sends his regards, by the way. His actual wife was very interested to hear about you." For the first time, real fear flickered across her face. "Whatever you think you know." "I know everything," I interrupted. "The fake identity, the previous scams, Victor's disbarment. The only thing I don't know is what really happened to my mother." Teresa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this. You clearly need help, just like your mother did." I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. "Sit down. Unless you'd rather explain everything to the FBI agents at the next table. Financial fraud across state lines is a federal crime, isn't it?" She hesitated. Then, slowly, she sat back down. Her confident facade was beginning to crumble. "What do you want?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The truth," I said. "Starting with what you and Victor did to my mother." For the first time, Teresa looked truly afraid. Her perfect mask of charm and confidence was gone, replaced by something raw and desperate. "Your mother was going to ruin everything," she admitted, her voice bitter. "She found proof that Victor and I had worked together before. Documents that could expose my real identity. She was going to show them to your father that morning." I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the table. "What did you do to her?" Teresa's eyes darted around the cafe, searching for a way out. "We didn't mean for her to die. Victor just gave her something to make her confused during the meeting, to make her seem unstable. Her heart condition, we didn't know it would." Before she could finish, two men approached our table. They flashed their badges. "Teresa Blackwood," one of them said, his voice firm. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and involvement in the death of Catherine Andrews." Teresa's face went pale. She tried to protest, but the agents didn't give her a chance. They pulled her to her feet, cuffing her hands behind her back. I sat there, my entire body shaking as I watched them lead her away. Sarah appeared at my side and squeezed my shoulder. "Victor's been arrested too. They picked him up at his office 20 minutes ago." My phone buzzed. It was my dad calling. I hesitated, then answered. "Isabel," his voice was shaky. "Is it true?" I closed my eyes, feeling a lump in my throat. "All of it, Dad. I found Mom's diary. She was trying to protect us. She knew what Teresa was planning." There was a long silence. Then, in a voice filled with regret, he said, "I should have listened to your mother. I should have seen through Teresa's act. I'm so sorry, sweetheart." Tears welled in my eyes, but this time, they weren't from frustration or anger. They were from relief. My mother had fought to protect us, and even though she hadn't lived to see it, her fight wasn't in vain. She had given me the strength to finish what she started. And now, at last, justice was being served.